Well, okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Carl Dahlgren. I'm the International Trade Specialist focused on the life science sector for the Washington State Department of Commerce. And I'm very excited and proud to be able to present this first webinar focused on the Brazilian life science sector, together with our partners at Sidera Consult. They have put together an impressive and very interesting group of experts in their fields that will hopefully give a nice intro and glimpse to this very, very attractive market, very complex, but very rewarding, and hopefully become partners and make this a market that Washington State companies can consider and get involved in. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Diego Ures, who is the one of the partners at Sidera Consult, focused on the investment and trade sectors. Diego, please.
Well, thank you very much, Carl. Hello, everyone. And hello from Brazil. We have put together a very nice webinar here. And the idea today is actually not to speak so much about the technical aspects of the Brazilian market, but to give you a broad knowledge about the market and introduce you to some people that will be very valuable in assisting in accessing markets such as Brazil and other places in Latin America. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Before I start, I'm just going to ask you to please turn off your mics if your mic is not off. And let's see here if I can. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so again, this webinar is on the roadmap to the Brazilian life science market. And before I start, I would like to thank the Washington State Department of Commerce. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you see the? Okay, great. So again, I would like to first of all thank the Department of Commerce from the state of Washington and actually congratulate the state for doing an incredible work. The Sidera actually works with governments and associations from all around the world, and to see the work that the Department of Commerce in the state of Washington is doing is very impressive, and it's providing a very important support in this current times, these difficult times that we're going through. And thinking especially about what you probably hear quite a lot in the media lately, which is the trade wars between different countries around the world. The U.S. is no different. There's quite a lot of tension going on between countries. And, this political and diplomatic tensions, they have a huge impact on the daily lives of businesses, right? If you think about a couple of years ago, everything was focused on Asia. Everyone wanted to export to China, and other markets were not as important. Now, when you take into the consideration the ongoing diplomatic situation between some countries, and you add to the fact that the Washington State, most of the jobs, 40% of the jobs in the Washington State are actually somehow linked to international trade. And when you put these two things together, it becomes clear on the minds of business people that you need to diversify, right? And you need to start looking at other markets that are just as relevant, and don't put all the eggs into the same basket, right? Now, if you look a little bit on the Latin American region, you will see that actually the region is quite big. In terms of population, to give you an idea, the population of Latin America is pretty much similar to the size of the population of the European continent. So that shows the potential of the region and the opportunities that could come from this part of the planet. Now, in this webinar, just to provide you guys with a little bit of a framework, so we're doing a quick introduction here, which lasts about 5 minutes. Then we'll have a very nice group of presenters, and I'll provide you some feedback and some bios on them, so you have an idea of who you're listening to. We'll then open to the Q&A session, and we'll provide a closing after that, okay? So let's just give you guys a brief introduction on these speakers. And I'm very happy to be able to share their experiences with you, because it is truly a group of very talented professionals. So the presentation, the first presentation will be on the general introduction on the life science market in Brazil. I'll be presenting that. So again, I'm sorry I didn't present myself before, but my name is Diego Uris. I'm also a partner at Sidera Consult, and I'm an economist. Then Mariana Shakov will do the regulatory introduction on the Brazilian market. She's also a founding partner of Sidera Consult, and an economist. After Mariana, Sergio, who is the director of Comexport, which is a very impressive trading company located in Brazil, but with businesses all around the region. And we are very lucky to be able to count with the experience and the knowledge of Veronica Martins, who works in the Trade and Compliance Department for Johnson's & Johnson's. Okay, so here's, I'm just gonna jump into the first topic, which is the general overview of the Brazilian life science sector. And again, if there's one thing that you guys, I would like you guys to take away from this webinar at the end of the day, is to first understand the need to diversify, which I think it's becoming, again, very clear. And second, to use the resources that we are presenting here in this webinar for as a tool for gaining access to the regional market. So everyone here, all the presenters are very accessible. Their contact information will be available. If you don't write it down, please get in touch with Carl from the Department of Commerce. He'll be happy to share the contact information for everyone here in the webinar. So talking specifically about Brazil, there are obviously some are well known for the people that have some experience with Brazil, some are not. But the language barrier is obviously a challenge when doing business with Brazil, right? Not just the language, but the culture. And this is something that requires adjustment and some feedback from the local people, right? Brazil is famous for having a very complex tax structure. The import and export procedures in Brazil are not the most simple ones. They tend to be rather bureaucratic. There are some concerns related to licenses and registrations. There is actually, this is one of the things that will be mentioning in the other presentations. But it's something that if you follow the guidelines and the step-by-step that the local agencies require, it's actually not any more complex than what you would find in other places. Okay, and there are quite a lot of concerns associated with patent restrictions and delays obtaining the local registrations for patents. Now, let me just provide you, some of you probably know quite a lot about Brazil. This presentation is focused on Brazil, but I think it's interesting to provide you guys with a more broad understanding of the country. So Brazil is a very large country. We have around 212 million people living here. It's sunny most of the time, not all of the time. We have a $1.8 trillion GDP, which makes Brazil one of the largest economies in the world. Depending on the exchange rate, it's anything between the 6th and the 9th largest economy. We have a very big, large middle class. It's around 120 million people. The population is also getting older. So about 11% of the population is over 65 years old. And most of the people in Brazil live in urban areas, in big cities. Now, specifically about the healthcare sector, Brazil spends around $40 billion a year in healthcare related expenses. We have around 500,000 hospital beds available to the population, and 500,000 doctors are registered with the local Brazilian medical board. There are 70,000 drugstores, 275,000 dentists, and 6,800 hospitals. So it is a very large market, and this is only taking into consideration the country, not the region. So if you take into account the whole region, it will be a lot more than that. Now, talking a little bit about the infrastructure in Brazil, Brazil has a universal healthcare system, which was set up in 1988. So it's a little over 30 years old, and it's a very interesting experiment, but it has its shortcomings, and it attends to about 75% of the population. It's available to everyone, but because of its shortcomings, not everyone actually uses. The quality is not the best in every specialty. And for this shortcomings, for instance, when you talk about CT scans and MRIs, the public hospitals are actually using the private healthcare system to complement the lack of equipment in the public system. So there's quite a lot of usage by the public system of the private sector. We have in Brazil around 1,300 private health insurance companies, and they have around 48 million people using this healthcare insurance, which makes Brazil one of the largest markets for private health insurance. Now, just to give you a little bit of context with relations to research and development, within the life science sector, about 44% of the companies in Brazil are less than 5 years old. So it is a dynamic, it's a young sector for Brazil. There are some very well-established companies, but the bulk of the sector is made out of young companies, and they tend to come usually from the incubators that we have here in Brazil. So 50% of them actually go through the incubation process of various incubators. Now, specifically about the pharma industry in Brazil, it's a $30 billion market, and it's one of the fastest growing markets in the world. It grows at around 12% a year. And if you take into account the non-retail segment, so the hospitals, the government, In clinics, they account for about 30% of that, and the rest is over-the-counter and prescriptions, medications, which accounts for 70%. One very important portion of the Brazilian pharma sector is obviously government purchases due to the universal healthcare system that we have here. And in 2018, this is the earliest data that I was able to find. The government actually purchased $5 billion worth of medication services and products related to pharma. All right. The genetics, it's also a very relevant sector in Brazil. Brazil is actually rather famous for generics, not in a good way. Brazil broke quite a lot of patents many years ago and created quite a few problems in the global pharma sector. But so the generics account for about 18% of the Brazilian market. Okay. So again, all of this information that I'm giving, the presentation will be available to everyone later on. And this is everything here is to give you an idea of the size of the market. Okay. So if you look into the import and export data for the pharma sector specifically, Brazil imports around $7 billion per year in pharma products and exports quite a lot less. There's a huge trade deficit here, but it's good for the countries that export. U.S. is actually the main partner in this sector, in the pharma sector. Brazil imports quite a lot of pharma products from the U.S. And as far as destinations for pharma products leaving Brazil, the region is a very big buyer of Brazilian products. And when I say buyer, bear in mind that one of the important things to understand here is that Brazil can function as a springboard to other countries in the region. Okay, so quite a lot of the products being exported to the region could actually be coming from places like the U.S. and then being re-exported to other countries in Latin America. Now, the medical device sector in Brazil is also a very strong sector. Brazil is the largest medical device market in Latin America, and it's the second amongst the developing countries, only behind China, growing at a 16% rate per year. And the market size here is about $11 billion. Specifically, there's some very interesting subsectors such as the clinical diagnostics market, which is estimated at around $1 billion. And of course, the biotechnology market, which is a very dynamic market in Brazil, which is a $7 billion market in Brazil. Now, within medical devices, there's quite a lot of growing demand when you talk about specifically ultrasound systems. And I understand this is very important for the state of Washington, given that the ultrasound system was born in the state of Washington. And again, Brazil is a part of the medical device single audit program, which helps a lot when registering products here. Now, really quickly here about the import data on medical devices. Brazil imports around $3.4 billion worth of medical devices, and the U.S. is, again, a very large trading partner for Brazil. Now, let's just briefly mention here some of the trends of the local market. Some are obvious. There's quite a lot of growing demand with respect to anything associated with COVID. Just like the United States, Brazil has quite a lot of cases. So everything associated with COVID has a lot of demand. But there are also quite a lot of demand and opportunities in the lab and research equipment. CBD products is something that is growing a lot, and the regulation in Brazil is changing and adapting for that market. So it's a very interesting time to be present in Brazil. the e-health and telemedicine englobing and covering wearables, softwares, and there are obviously quite a lot of startups in this subsector with a lot of opportunities in Brazil. Medical imaging, as I mentioned, the ultrasound system is growing, and the biotechnology. Within the biotechnology, Brazil is actually the second largest GMO grower, genetically modified crops, and a leader in the biofuel industry. So if you look specifically within those two sectors, there's quite a lot of opportunities to explore. And finally here, this is something that it's more strategic in terms of business, but it's something that I think it's very important that everyone understands. Again, Brazil is very large when you take into consideration the Latin America region. It's responsible for about 40% of this market. And a lot of multinational corporations use Brazil as a platform to enter into other markets. And by doing that, they take advantage of Brazil's trade agreements and all the facilitation that comes with that, associated with tariff reductions and everything else, as registration for medical devices and adjusting to local standards. So this is the brief overview. I'm gonna pass on the word now to Mariana, who will talk a little bit about the regulatory aspect of Brazil. So, Mary.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Diego. So hi, everyone. I'm Mariana, one of the partners of Sidera. And today, the idea of my presentation today is to show you a brief overview of what are the regulatory requirements to enable marketing and
Mary,
sales.
sorry, we can't. I don't see your presentation. I don't know if anyone can see your presentation, but
no, I haven't put it up yet. So
okay. Sorry.
Let me just do that. Can you see it?
Not yet. I think it's uploading.
1 second. How about now?
Yes. Now it's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So the idea of my presentation is to give you a general overview of what are the regulatory requirements needed to enable marketing and selling of foreign products in the Brazilian market for the life science sector. In this sense, I'm going to first explain a little bit about the basic organizational structure of the governmental bodies responsible for the sector, and then the steps needed to get your products in the country, also with regards to regulatory matters. Okay, so this is a general chart showing the structure of the Ministry of Health at the federal level. I didn't put too many details because what we need to understand here is where Anvisa stands. Anvisa is the Brazilian Sanitary Agency, as many of you probably already know. So although it is linked to the Ministry of Health, it is a completely independent, self-funded agency. Okay, so Anvisa exists already since 1999, and it's basically responsible for the sanitary control over production and sales and even the processes of some category of products that include, for example, drugs, pharmaceuticals, labs, food, cosmetics, sanitizing products, and other products within these categories. An important aspect I wanted to talk about Anvisa is that it has been making efforts in the past years to become an international reference as a sanitary agency. It has been improving its processes, and although it is known to be a difficult agency to work with, it has been trying to reduce bureaucracy and has actually been involved in many international programs. Last year, it was nominated for a position in the steering committee of the International Council on Harmonization of Technical Requirement for Registration of Pharmaceuticals for Human Use, the ICH, as you can see there. So it is the biggest, I think the biggest bottleneck they have is that they don't have enough staff for the amount of work and responsibility they have. So this may lead to longer processes, delay in processes, but this has been getting better. And now I believe with the COVID-19 pandemic, it actually is requiring them to improve the efficiency of their processes. So this will probably be will last longer after the pandemic. So how do you start to sell in Brazil? What do you need to do? It's important to understand that because all procedures and analysis of process and registration approvals are done directly by Anvisa, the company requesting the procedures and the registration has to be Brazilian. So this means that the first step is finding a reliable partner in the country, in Brazil. Then it's important to understand the requirements for your type of product. So what is the tariff classification? What are the customs requirements? Which are the regulatory bodies that are responsible for authorizing the import of that certain product? So it can be Anvisa, but in some cases you have other governmental bodies involved, such as Inmetro. I will talk a little bit about Inmetro later, the SACs. So finally, after understanding what you need, you would get prepared, collect the required documentation to plead for approval and registration with Anvisa. So regulatory requirements involve having, as I said, a representative in Brazil. It can be a subsidiary or a distributor or importer who will take a lot of responsibility for the product in the Brazilian market. So it will represent your product in the Brazilian market. This company has to have an operating permit, which is an authorization to deal with that specific type of product. So they might have it once you have a partner here, maybe they will have this already or not. And this is something we also help companies to obtain. Then you will have to register your product, and that can be notifying or making a short registration or a registration with Anvisa. And finally, an import license you have to have issued. How do you know what your product needs to request for, how it can be registered with Anvisa? How do you get it approved with Anvisa? And you will probably have to go over your classification, the classification risk of your product. So if it's low risk, class 1, you'll have to go through notification, which is a simpler and less expensive process. If it's class 2, medium risk, you will have to do a short registration, also simpler than having a registration, which is basically for high risk products. Once you get approval, it depends on the product, what would be the validity of that registration. So here in this presentation, I just put as an example healthcare products, which you will have for registration. For example, it will be valid for 10 years. So I'll make this presentation available afterwards, as Diego mentioned, but this slide, it basically lists the type of documentation the manufacturing company could be requested to provide. So basically technical information about the product, authorization to the importer and representing your product in the market, proof of good manufacturing process can be requested as well in the case of registration. And a relevant point here is that electrical medical devices normally need to obtain a certification of the product issued by Inmetro, as you can see in the presentation. INMETRO is the National Institute of Metrology Standardization and Industrial Quality. And this is a different procedure. We can eventually, if you have any questions, you can ask us, but we would probably have to have another webinar to go over the procedure with INMETRO. But for some products to be approved with ANVISA, you do have to present the certification issued by INMETRO. Finally, when importing the product, an import license has to be issued. The procedure nowadays is all electronic. It is more efficient because of this. And I guess the main bottleneck is that you have two systems you have to request this in. So you have the custom system, which is Syscomex, and you also have DataVisa, the ANVISA system, and they're not linked to each other. So sometimes you may have delays in this process, but it's actually one of the good things is that recently you're now able to request the import license before shipment, and before you weren't able to do that. So the analysis for the import license may take 6 to 40 days. It depends. It's a good range. Then this is the summary of the steps. You will access the presentation later. If you have any questions, just let me know. But basically, step 1 is finding a business partner. Step 2, you will get your documentation ready, make the request with ANVISA. It will go through analysis. ANVISA may come back with questions, and you have to provide extra supplemental information on your documentation. And then finally, registration is approved. What is not included in these steps here is the operating permit for your local business partner in Brazil. But if they don't have it, they have to do it beforehand, before requesting registration. And yeah, so you will need to do that. And also, for example, I also didn't include there INMETRO certification if needed. And then just to finalize, I wanted to talk a little bit about the actions that are being taken here in Brazil by the government in this sector. And just within ANVISA, more than 90 exceptional and temporary measures have been taken. And I'm just going to mention the one that is more significant. And this resolution, this notice and regulation they issued actually allows rapid test kits for COVID and neck breathers to be imported to Brazil without registration. And this is something that they add they condition it to some aspects, some items, and also ANVISA still advises companies to register it, but you are allowed to do this right now because of the pandemic. And also for PPEs, you are allowed to import it, and you don't need operating permits or registrations. You can just import them without any of these requirements that are usually requested. And finally, there were within the Ministry of Economy, there was a tariff reduction of more than 400 products that they now have a 0% tax, import tax. So we can also provide this list for you later. So just let us know if you need it. And yeah, so basically that's it. I'm available if you guys have any questions at the end of this presentation. And I think now I'm going to pass it to Sergio, right?
Yes. Thank you, Mary. You can stop sharing your screen now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you and good afternoon to you all. My name is Sergio Vladimirsky. You can all hear me, correct? Okay.
Yes.
My name is Sergio Vladimirsky, and I'm a director and one of the partners at Comexport, which is a trading company in Brazil. And I'd like to thank the Washington State Department of Commerce and Sidera for inviting us to this webinar. And I'd like to share, it's a bit of a complement of this, of what Mary presented. She put the, let's say, the regulatory steps, and we provide the operational steps, and we can handle the entire operation of the import process into Brazil for you or for any of your customers here in Brazil. So let me start my presentation here. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Looks good.
So first of all, I would like to tell you exactly what Comexport can do for you before we go into any other details. We are a logistics management company, which means we are a 4PL. In other words, we handle everything regarding to freight, warehousing, be it in Brazil or outside Brazil, internal transportation, insurance. So most of your logistic needs, we don't do that ourselves. I mean, we don't have a freight company, but we hire and administrate the freight companies and warehousing companies all over Brazil. We provide financing alternatives. We have a very strong position with many of the banks in Brazil, or mostly all of the banks in Brazil. If you need the financing for your customers, we can probably find a solution, as long as they're financially viable, of course. The third item is a very important one, which is the fiscal planning. As Mariana mentioned, Brazil is not a simple country in terms of tax legislation. The good news is that that's supposed to change in the next years, but it's going to take many years until that changes. And we provide the consultancy on how to tax plan, so how to reduce the tariffs on the imports to the lowest. Cash flow optimization, which goes along with the financing alternatives. General logistics strategy. And we do all of this through our proprietary control tower and visibility system. So you have either the importer or the exporter can have total visibility of what's going on, where the tracking, and to know exactly where his merchandise is at any moment in time, and all the costs associated with that. Just a brief overview of Comexport. We have 47 years of experience in Brazil, more than 300 employees, $1.7 billion in revenues in 2019, roughly responsible for 1% of all of Brazilian imports. That's all of these, not only life sciences, of course, but all together. We're not specialized in any sort of product. We handle any product line, from automotive to electronics to life sciences, whatever it is. Very, very keen on compliance. All of our operations have a very strong compliance edge to them. And we use, as I mentioned, intensive use of technology to provide visibility and control to our customers. Just to give you an idea, these are a few of our customers. We handled, for example, last year, approximately 10,000 containers, 33,000 cars, automotive, which is a big part of our business, and 1,300 tons of air freight. Here are some of our customers, which we are very glad to be able to serve. So I'm going to go through, as with the other presentations, I'm going to make this available to to Carl at the Washington State Department of Commerce. And of course, I'm not going to go through in all the details, the flow here, but you can keep the presentation and use it as you wish. This is a simple flow chart of how import would actually be processed. And here, I think the main issue or the main step is what Mariana mentioned, the import license. So there are two types of import license, one that can be approved import license, and we all again give tracking on how this process is going. So the 6 to 40 days in our experience is much less than 40, of course, and we give you the visibility on how this process is developing. The other part of the import process, which she did not mention, which is the customs part, just so you understand, once the merchandise is in Brazil, it can be transferred through a bonded warehouse or a regular warehouse. There are three main channels in the Brazilian Customs and Border Patrol, which is the green channel, the yellow channel, and the red. The green channel, there's no check whatsoever. Once you get the green light, it means your process has been approved electronically without any manual interference. We have about 98.13%, this was the number in 2019, of green channels at Comexport. So within 24 hours, your goods will be cleared. If you get the yellow channel, that means that the customs official will want to check the paperwork, but not the actual merchandise. He'll check the paperwork, and that takes about 48 hours from the registration. And the red channel is the worst, which is he wants to look at the paperwork and the merchandise. So that involves going to the warehouse. If the merchandise is in a container, he will unload the container, look at everything. Of course, meanwhile you're paying the warehousing fee, so that you don't want to get a red channel. It's extra cost, and it will take about 72 hours if there are no problems or if he doesn't request to understand better what the product is. So the main, let's say the main driver to get the green channel is to have a very good product description, to make sure that the NCM that we're using, the tariff code, is exactly what the product describes, the product at the exact function. I know that with biological products, sometimes that's not so easy, but that's something we have to make sure of. And Comexport, if we were to handle these imports, we would do a very thorough job on that to make sure that this is exactly right. That would give us this percentage of green channels. Talking about a little bit about taxes. So we have these federal taxes. We have the import tax. It could be 0 or 35, up to 35%. 0 would be for two situations. One, if there are no local alternatives, if there's no locally produced equal product, and that means we would have to apply for what's called an X, which is an exception. And we would have to prove that there is no local manufacturer of the product that we would be importing. That would allow us to have a 0 tariff. Or in the case where the government, for one reason, and a good example now is the COVID crisis, they want to incentivize the importation of products that we don't have enough of, and we need. A few months ago, we imported about 6 or 7 million masks from China because We needed them desperately here in Brazil in the beginning of the COVID crisis, and that was a zero import tax. But those are generally temporary measures. Then we have the IPI tax, which is sorry if this is a little confusing, but it is really confusing and very complicated. This structure, I hope, will change in the next few years, but it's going to take a while. The IPI tax is also can be from 0 to 15, depending on the product. Then there's these two other taxes that go together, PIS and COFINS, about 11%, both added together. And then finally, the state tax. Brazil has 27 states, actually 26 plus the district Brasilia, which is also considered a state. And that tax, everyone has a different legislation, and it varies from 4 to 20%. So my main point here is that the overall tax burden will be more than 50% on your product. So it's very, very important when considering selling your product in Brazil that your importer does his homework on how to minimize. And there are several strategies to minimize this burden, because that can make a product competitive or not. It's a maze that has to be navigated with a lot of knowledge and careful attention. Logistics in Brazil is not so different than logistics anywhere else, maybe a little more expensive, because some of the warehousing where you have port warehousing, it's a little bit of a monopoly of some companies, so they charge a percentage over the value of the goods, which is not a good thing. So what we do in those cases, we make sure we stay the least amount of time possible and remove the good to another type of warehouse. But most of the charges and logistic charges are similar to what you have in other parts of the region, or of the world. And but it's also key to analyze very carefully how you use these logistic providers so that you can have a more competitive strategy and reduce the total overall cost of your products. For example, if you stay in the port area too long, you're going to pay a very heavy warehousing fee. So there are strategies to reduce that, and Comexport has great knowledge of, operates in many ports in Brazil, and we have knowledge of how to reduce these charges. Some other costs which represent 5 to 8% of cargo value. Nothing new here. Also, one thing that you might not be used to, which is unique to Brazil, is the cargo escort. As you know, we have some problems with violence, and the cargoes which are very sought out. For example, masks in the middle of the pandemic would be a cargo that would need a escort for the trucks, so that they are not assaulted in their from point A to point B, and the insurance companies are the ones that ask for this cargo escort. So this is the only, let's say, different cost that you probably don't see in many other places. But unfortunately, in Brazil, the insurance companies sometimes require that, depending on the value and depending on how, let's say, how liquid your cargo. Liquid in terms of being able to sell, not liquid in form of matter, but liquid in terms of being able to be sold quickly in the market. If you bring in let's say a a biomedical that's very unique, probably won't need a cargo escort, but masks today are something that are desired everywhere. I asked for my team to give us some examples of what the transit time you can expect from Seattle. So it's about 30 days. We have one transshipment port, probably Houston, and the ships will probably go through the Panama Canal. Air freight, again, Los Angeles would probably be the closest to your region. And the daily flights are from San Francisco to Houston, and Houston to Guarulhos, which is a São Paulo airport, or to Campinas airport. And we have a lot of flights also from Miami. So those are, I'd say, Houston and Miami are the main connection points, air freight from the U.S. And as far as ports, there are many ports in the U.S. that serve Brazil, some with transshipments and some directly. Just an example of a dashboard that we have for, sorry, this is in Portuguese, but for example, these are import licenses, the lead time to acquire the import license for one of our customers. These are his costs distributed in each type of cost. The SLA that we would have with the customer on how many days do we have for each process. This is all, these are examples of the dashboards that we provide once we process the imports. Again, the presentation is going to be available for you, and I'm going to leave you my contacts, and we'd be happy to talk to you or to your customers if you need information, and I'll be available here to answer any questions you may have today.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sergio. This is very valuable information. So I think next is Vero from Johnson & Johnson. If you can share your screen with your presentation, that'll be great, Vero.
Hello, everyone. I'm Veronica Martins. Let me just put up my presentation and then I will be ready to start. Please confirm you can see my screen. Is that the presentation?
Yes,
Okay.
Looks good. Thank you.
So first, I would like to thank the state of Washington and also Sidera for that invite. I'm very honored with that. It's our first partnership, so thank you. And hello, everyone. I'm Veronica Martins. I have more than 10 years of experience in international trade compliance, and also supply chain. And currently, I'm working for J&J, and I'm responsible for the regional trade compliance team in LATAM. Basically, what I would like to share that with you today is some of best practices, and I would like to consolidate all of we've been discussed so far. So I will focus this webinar on regulatory, logistics, and customs documents examples, right? The first case, it will be the challenging logistics, and what I'm bringing up here to you, and what would be the first thing that will come into your minds when you have to decide to come into Brazil. What would be the first thing where should you start? The first thing is to define of having a company internal site versus an external partner. So this will be the first decision you will need to have, because find the right place that would achieve exactly the conditions your business required. It will be a challenge, and it will be planned in advance. For example, if your product would require temperature control, if you do not pay attention on that, you will have a lot of risks of temperature excursion. So this may cause delays on your plan, and also it will be and it will have a lot of cost in terms of that. So this will be the first part of your plan. And second is to define if you use a primary or a secondary zone. And this will be important in terms of cost too. And this will be part of your discussion when planning to come into Brazil. Let me just put this up. Did I guess it? All right. So the third, it will be when you define who will be your broker, and this will be very important for you too. So it will be your first contact here within government and with the customs. And as we said, there's a lot of regulatory requirements. So the brokerage service contract, it will be primarily important to you too. And the first thing that you have to assure is the SLAs on your contracts. Customs release timeliness is one of the topics that you need to bear in mind in terms of brokerage service contracts too. It's not changing. I'm not sure what's going on. Diego, maybe I have some issues with the sharing my screen. Can you do it for me, please?
Yeah, then just stop sharing your screen.
I'm trying. Yeah.
I'll do the sharing.
Thank you.
No problem.
I was at the slide 3.
Okay, so this one?
No, this is the second one. Okay. So in terms of regulatory compliance, what would be the best practices that would help you to avoid inspection when customs delays or when you have some regulatory inspections? It would to provide a certificate of analysis. The certificate of analysis is not a mandatory document, but it would be a very important document to you to pay attention when you export medical device to Brazil. It will help you in all of the aspects and is one of the things that I would choose as the first document that I will have to focus on when decided to import into Brazil, is to include that on your routine. And what would be the primary topics that need to be placed on the certificate of analysis is the company name, the identification of the kit, the part number, lot number, test conditions, test parameters, the specifications and requirements, results, approval. One thing that is important to mention is the certificate is challenging to transfer after the registration. So it is important to be that all of the items need to be in the original documents, because review it and then when you present that to the government, it will be almost impossible. So there will be the best practice on that. Can you change the slide, please? All right, so documents approval. How to avoid customs clearance issues in your documents. One thing that I would like to bring that up to you is to establish a robust procedures for the consignee approval. I mean, like, never ship a good without the green light. That would be important for you to have on your internal operations. The green light means having the review the documents according to the purchase order, review the tariff classification description, assure that you have a full description, avoid estimated customs value and weight. We struggled a lot about import license approval, so the green light must contain also if this document requires a pre or post shipment for import license, and also if you intend to export to Brazil through a courier company, you need to, in terms of medical device, you need to assure that there's no extra license or even requirements or even restrictions for that. So it's important to bear in mind that, because it's pretty common to use courier shipment through the world, But in terms of medical device, Brazil has some restrictions, so it is important to bear in mind too. So basically, those are the cases that I pick up to present it today. And I'm just sending this my number, my name, and my contact. If you would like to, if you have any question or if you need any support, please, I'll be available to help you.
Thank you, Vero. Thank you.
I guess you are on mute, Carol.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I would like to thank everybody and open the floor for questions. We have some already that I got here. I don't know if anybody wants to raise their hand and speak, or if I should just start with the ones that I already got. So Mariana, could you please elaborate the advantage firms may have to export to Brazil? Are there ways to reduce the other high taxes we face in the country?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So, okay, so as I mentioned in right at the end of the what?
You're on mute.
What? Am I? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
It's okay.
Okay. So as I was mentioning at the end of my presentation, currently we have many products that have already a tariff reduction because of the pandemic. So this is a huge opportunity, and when you have a 0% import duty, automatically all the other import taxes reduce together. So this is huge, and also it's a huge opportunity. And regarding tariff reductions, when you export to Brazil, we also have some mechanisms we can use. Also, you would need a Brazilian company to make this request. But for example, we have ex-tarifários, which is a mechanism used for machines, equipment to be imported into the country that don't have national production here in Brazil. And you could not easily, but very fast, in a matter of 3 months, reduce to 2% your current tariff reduction, your current tariff import duty.
Thank you, Mary. The next question is for Sergio. Sergio, the tax and logistics scenarios in Brazil seem very complex. Can Comexport help us evaluate and select the best logistics and tax strategies after we have customers in Brazil?
Yes, Carolina, that's exactly what we do. Before we begin any import process, we analyze the product and the logistics requirements, many of which have been touched by Mariana and Veronica. And we would then, with the help of our internal team and of tax lawyers, if necessary, select the best options to minimize these costs, or sometimes it's not a question of cost, it's a question of transit time or a question of temperature control and quality. So we would measure what is the most important for the customer and provide him with the best solution and execute that solution with our guarantee. So that's exactly what we do.
Thank you, Sergio. We have another question. What is the general cost range for registering medical devices to Brazil? What is the paradigm for facility audits by Anvisa? interval between audits. Mary, I think this is for you, and Sergio.
Sergio, you can go ahead, please.
I don't have the exact numbers here with me. I don't know if Mary has. I wouldn't. It really depends upon what product and the classification of the product. So I'm sorry, I cannot answer the questions directly without more information.
Carol, can you please repeat? Because
if you want to, we can follow up with you later with the particular specifications of your product. So feel free to write to us. We're going to put up the emails of everyone so you can send the emails directly. Actually, everyone that has questions that we might have to cut the questions short because there are many, many questions, but whenever someone has a question, please feel free to send them to us. Diego, I think that we just have time for another question, which is for you. What is the best approach to finding a local partner?
So actually, I think, thank you for the question. I think the best way to go about finding this local partner is actually understanding the market better. This is the first step. So having probably an analysis done for your specific product and subsector, that's the first step to go about finding the perfect match. And then obviously, armed with that kind of knowledge, you can start participating in the local trade shows. The Washington State Department of Commerce has quite a lot of activities associated with facilitating matches. I would suggest taking advantage of that. But I think step one is really understanding the market. If you understand the market better, you will automatically understand the main players and figure out what is the best one given your business model. So thank you for the question.
We may have time for just one more. Carl, this is we don't have the person that made the question, but is there any kind of government support for the companies to grow their exports into Brazil?
Well, we have the STEP voucher funding for the next fiscal year. We should have that prepared soon. We'll be sending out information on that. And for certain reimbursable export activities, we hope that Washington companies take advantage of that. And as we've said before, just contact us and we'll work with you. Our idea is to make things less complicated and to help Washington companies succeed. So yes, there will be different sorts of activities such as business-to-business matchmaking, market research, trade shows, virtual trade shows, where we hope that Sidera will be partnering with us to make our transition into Brazil easier. So please reach out to us and we'll work with you to make sure you do things correctly and succeed. Thank you, Caro.
No problem. Thank you, Carl. So I'm just going to close it because we're a little bit behind. We are 10 minutes late. So I'm just going to close our presentation. And first, I would like to thank you, everyone, for the participation. We have had some really important participants aside from the speakers. So thank you, Carl, for this opportunity. I would like to thank my partners, Diego and Mariana, Sergio, the VP of Comexport. We are all working together to make your life easier here in Brazil. Veronica, thank you so much for the cases. This is very helpful for someone that is trying to navigate in Brazil. And I would like to say thank you for some people that we know that are in the audience as well. I would like to give my regards to Victor Borges, who is the president of the Network of National Municipalities in Brazil. He's being a great help on developing policies here in Brazil that can help companies matchmake with the Washington State firms. And I think that one final message that I have for you is that, of course, you know that we have in international trade some singularities regarding the existence of international and national legislation. We have diverse business cultures, as Diego mentioned. We have different approaches required and a lot of government interface. And this is why you need a local partner here in Brazil. And we want to help you out finding other partners. And this is what we are completely capable of showing you the way in an easy, safe, reliable manner. Sidera, just because we didn't have time before, is an international trade company. We have our headquarters here in São Paulo, but we have branches in the 5 continents. And we work basically with trade barriers and trade strategy and attraction of investment. And I'm the CEO and also responsible for trade policies. Diego is the person responsible for finance, investment attraction, market studies. Mariana is our partner for tariff reduction, tariff strategy, non-tariff barriers. And we have other partners all over the world that can help you, not only in Brazil, but Latin America, Africa, Israel, and the United States. And one final comment that I wanted to make for you is your company deserves more than just luck. This is important because our clients are, oh, but it's so hard to work in Brazil, and we have to be really lucky to get ahead in Latin America. You have been working with countries that are much harder than Brazil. Yes, you must diversify, as Diego mentioned, and Latin America is much closer to you, is growing, and it presents huge opportunities. Yes, the Washington State Department of Commerce can help you, and it's doing an excellent job in bringing these companies closer together. And you are in the best hands you can have. And yes, it is complex, as you all saw in the presentations, but we have a brilliant team that can assist you, and you can definitely advance here in Brazil, and we are here to help you. I think that Carl would like to end maybe this webinar, well, thank you all for this opportunity.
I think you summed it up pretty well, Caro. Thank you very much. I just wanted to thank everybody who attended. Please feel free to contact us. We feel honored to be working with Sidera and their partners, and we're more than willing to help you navigate this market. So thanks again, and we look forward to repeating this. Please send any feedback, and we'll try to incorporate things. This was just a quick, very hurried overview, but you know, we can break this up into sectors and pieces, make this even more interesting and more dive deeper into these things. We're in good hands. Thank you again, Caro, Diego, Mariana, Sergio y Vero. Prazer conhecê-los. Muito obrigado for the presentation. Thanks, everyone, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Carl, for the opportunity.
Of course. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.